OA Preamble. Overeaters Anonymous is a fellowship of individuals who, through shared experience, strength, and hope, are recovering from compulsive overeating. We welcome everyone who wants to stop eating compulsively. There are no dues or fees for members. We are self-supporting through our own contributions, neither soliciting nor accepting outside donations. OA is not affiliated with any public or private organization, political movement, ideology, or religious doctrine. We take no position on outside issues. Our primary purpose is to abstain from compulsive eating and compulsive food behaviors and to carry the message of recovery through the 12 steps of OA to those who still suffer. How our meeting works. At this meeting, we follow a rotating format. On the second week of the month is a recovered OA speaker who will be speaking on the topic of their choosing for 30 minutes. There will be a follow-up Q&A segment for 15 minutes where fellows are welcome to ask any questions of our speaker, which are related to the topic in question. This meeting will be recorded by audio only, and you will see a recording sign at the top of your screen. The Q&A section of our meeting will also be recorded. Please post only in the chat function your question to me, Deb, your host, and we will ask a question anonymously on your behalf. Please do not do this before the Q&A segment opens. Seventh tradition. Before we share, it is time for our seventh tradition. Although we are meeting electronically, we still have Zoom meeting costs to pay, and we also give contributions to OA UK EB, which is our virtual intergroup. Please make a contribution using the PayPal or bank details that will be entered in the chat now. Newcomers, we ask that you wait to contribute until you are sure you want to be here. All right, today is a speaker meeting, and our speaker is, hold on, Diane, right? Okay. Thank you for being here, and it's over to you. So we'll start the timer, and you can go right ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Deb. My name is Diane B. I'm a gratefully recovered compulsive eater living in New York. And just a quick prayer to my higher power that something I say will be heard by someone on this meeting who needs it or who wants it or just whatever. So please, God, I ask for that. Thy will and mine be one. Amen. So thank you for asking me to do service. It's really nice to be here. I've never been on this meeting before. And I wanted to go to page in the big book. I know we didn't have to have a reading or anything, but I was flipping through and in my big book on page 28, in the third paragraph, it starts with a distinguished American psychologist. And further down in the paragraph, it says, all of us, whatever our race, creed, or color, are the children of a living creator with whom we may form a relationship upon simple and understandable terms as soon as we are willing and honest enough to try. Oh my gosh, willing and honest enough. Really hard. Let me give you a little bit of background so I can qualify myself as belonging in this meeting. I came into the rooms in 1986. I have been in the rooms now more than half my life, and I weigh half of my top weight. When I walked in 1986, I had just done a liquid diet. I was the thinnest I had ever been as an adult. And my therapist sent me to OA for group support. So I was going in and out of relapse. My definitions of abstinence changed many times over the years. And I would have periods of recovery, periods of relapse. So my weight was and my program were yo-yoing just like I had been yo-yo dieting prior to coming here. I've been overweight my entire life. My first memory of compulsively eating was when I was 4 years old. And my weight was always a battle. And I thought I had a weight problem. I thought there was something wrong with me because I had a weight problem. I didn't understand about this disease until many, many, many years later. Okay, so then around maybe 2003 or so, I stopped coming to the rooms because I just felt like I'm not getting anywhere. And if I keep telling myself I'm a compulsive eater, I will always be a compulsive eater. Um, Went into a huge relapse. My husband was terminally ill. I had three young children. One of them has autism. And my life was miserable. And all I could do was eat, sleep, and cry. That was my life. And I kept thinking to myself, who's going to take care of my kids when my husband dies? Because I was useless. So in February of 2005, I came back to the rooms. Um, I got a sponsor immediately. And with that sponsor, I remember saying to her, like, I understand in AA, if you never have another drink, you can survive. I gave up smoking cigarettes in 1987. If I never have another cigarette, I can survive. I don't know how to survive without eating. And she was the first person who spoke to me about trigger foods. So on February 5th of 2005, I gave up sugar and wheat and haven't had any since, thank you God. And but I still was doing artificial sweeteners, I still was doing caffeine, I still was doing like playing around with stuff. And over the years since then, and I still was going in and out of relapse. And then since then, so then in 2018, anyway, 2018, I went into another relapse. And by October of 2019, when the weather started changing and I had to get back into my warmer clothing and my pants didn't fit or they were snug, I literally said to God, to my higher power, said, this disease is going to kill me. This disease is going to kill me. And I believed at that time. I didn't believe it prior to that. I was still negotiating. I was still saying, oh, I can do this, still taking control, still thinking that I could do this program alone. Or not really alone, but without really turning my will and my life over to my higher power. So I got a new sponsor who I've been with since October of 2019. Um, I don't know if I said this. When I came back in January or February of 2005, I was over 300 pounds. I don't know if I said that, but that was my top weight. And anyway, she talked to me about entire abstinence, not just specific trigger foods, but also ingredients and combinations of ingredients. And thank you, higher power. Since October of 2019, I have been entirely abstinent. It's almost 5 years. I've never, ever had that length of abstinence or recovery before. And more importantly, I've been recovered in all that time. So now let's go back to what I started talking about. With whatever our race, creed, or color are, that we are all the children of a living creator with whom we may form a relationship upon simple and understandable terms as soon as we are willing and honest enough to try. Well, so I got honest in 2019. I finally got honest. I finally realized that this disease was going to kill me. I couldn't keep going up and down the scale. I couldn't keep going in and out of recovery. I would be miserable and my relationships weren't great. And just like everything was really bad for me. So one of my character defects is judgment. I am very judgmental of other people, especially of myself. And I know that I learned this from my family of origin. My mom was like, nothing was ever her fault, but everything was my fault. And I always took the blame for stuff because they were always blaming me. I was the youngest, and I have one sister, but I was the younger one. And it was always Diane's fault. It was my fault that, I got a B instead of an A in class. It was my fault because I was talking too much in school. It was my fault because whatever it was always my fault. And so um, it just kind of always came down to me. And today I recognize that, and I think that that's part of why I'm so judgmental now. Today I'm much better about it, although I still have thoughts. I don't verbalize them anymore, I hope. And but I do still have thoughts about, oh, well, that's because of such and such or so and so or whatever. And almost every night on my 11-step review, I pray for God to remove my judgment, my being judgmental, and replace it with being compassionate. And that's what I really work on practicing each day. So the reason I bring this up is because that we are all children of a living creator. Well, if my creator, excuse me, if my creator is perfect, then everything is perfect in my higher powers world, which means every person, every living thing, every tree, every leaf, everything is perfect in my higher powers world. And that comes up a lot in my 10 steps. And I will say that I do steps 10, 11, and 12 on a regular basis. I never used to do 10 steps. And I realized a couple of years ago that I wouldn't do 10 steps because I was judging myself. How can you be so stupid? Why don't you know this yet? You're in your 60s. You should have this information. You should know how to do this. Like all this stuff that goes through my head that I probably would never say to another person, but I would say it to myself. And so I stopped doing 10 steps because I felt inferior. I thought that I was supposed to know all these things. Today I recognize that, yeah, I know that, but I'm human. I still make mistakes. I still slip up. I still have incidents or experiences that I could have done better. And it's not because I'm a bad person, it's because I did something poorly. You know, I am not a bad person, but I do things in not necessarily the best way. And that's okay. You know, so do all the people around me. It took me a long time to recognize that. So if that's true, then everybody in my world is perfect in the moment, you know, because we've all been created by whatever this thing is, this higher power thing, the creator. I often call my higher power my creative director. I do a lot of artwork. I never did artwork before, but once I started really having a really firm belief in a higher power, the art just started flowing out of me. And it was a surprise to me and it was fun and I like it. But I really believe that my higher power is my creative director. The other thing about this is that my my definition, my idea of what this creative director is has to be simple and understandable for me. I don't have to understand yours and you don't have to understand mine, but I have to understand mine. And I need simple definitions. I need to keep things simple and I need to have a simple relationship. So again, I don't know exactly what this thing is. I just know that there's a spark in me. There's something inside of me and there's something inside of every one of you that's connected to this, whatever it is, to this higher power, to this, intelligence, greater intelligence, or forces of the universe, or whatever we want to call it. And because of that, we are all connected, but we are all perfect in each moment of time because we all come from the same creator, in my opinion. So it had to be, it had to be simple and understandable terms. So I remember in a meditation I had a few years ago, I remember like envisioning myself in the middle of the ocean, just floating in the middle of the ocean, and I couldn't see the land. I was totally surrounded by water, and I was totally supported by the water. And it came to me in this meditation, that's what my higher power is. My higher power has no boundaries. It's always there. It's bigger than anything I can bring to it. It's bigger than anything else in this world, in this material world. And it supports me. This thing just supports me. And for me, my higher power isn't it. It transcends gender. It doesn't have a race. It doesn't have anything like that. It just is. And that, when I came to that meditation and I came to that understanding, things started getting easier for me in terms of this higher power. Now, I listen to A Vision for You almost every day. Today, right now, last week, we just started the chapter on We Agnostics. So we're having a lot of conversation about what this higher power thing is and what it can do for us or not. So, this particular meditation was really, really powerful for me because it kind of gave me an understanding that I didn't really have before, even though there's still parts of it that I don't get. I just know that it is, right? I have adopted this saying that I learned way back in my early days of program that there are no coincidences, only God working anonymously. Because there are things that happen that I have no explanation for, and somebody will say, "Oh, what a coincidence." And I'm like, there are no coincidences, only God working anonymously. And that really, really helped me a lot come through it. And then again, we come to the willingness and the honesty enough to try. So I had willingness. I've had willingness a long time. Sometimes I would take back my will. Like I remember one time I was in relapse, and my sponsor at the time wanted to take me back to step one and the doctor's opinion in the big book. And I was like, I know all that. I got it. I get it. Intellectually, I know this. I'm not willing to do it. I'm not willing to act on what I know. And that was a very willful statement, but I was aware that I had the knowledge, I had the intellect, I had that understanding. I just didn't want to do it. I wasn't willing to do it. And so I dropped her, as well, she dropped me, whatever, we parted ways. And I was in relapse again. I remember I used to think that I used to negotiate with foods. I used to negotiate with just stuff in my head. Like well, this time it'll be okay. Not a problem. I can do this. Or I can eat this or whatever it is. And it was not okay. So today I know that I have to pause, pray, and proceed. I have to take a moment and just say a prayer and ask for help. Take a breath and then proceed with whatever's happening in front of me. Just do what's in front of me. First things first, one step at a time. All those things, all those slogans that we have. I was going to say something else and I forgot it, whatever. So the willingness has been there. The honesty has not always been there, right? For years, I would not write down my food. I would not commit it to another person. I would just go, I would say, okay, I'm going to have 3 meals tomorrow and a snack. And then I would just go about my day and whatever was there. Today, I do write down my food. I keep a journal. And in the evening, when I do my 11-step review, after I do the writing and everything, I turn to the next page and I write down my food for the next day. Now, I have to tell you, in 5 years, it's pretty much the same thing every day, right? But I write it down, I commit it to my higher power. And the first year and a half with this sponsor, I would text it over to her and give it to her. I don't do that anymore. I just write it down and that's what I eat. And actually, it really helps me. So like today when I was going to have lunch, I was like, what did I say I was going to have? And I read it, I just have to just glance at it. And that has freed me up as much as I thought that was compulsive. I thought that was like being on one of those pay-in ways, which I had done many, many times. I was never willing to weigh and measure my food ever. And I started weighing and measuring my food when I only do it in the house. I still haven't been able to do it in a restaurant. Although I have a travel scale, I haven't used it. But the thought is there, and I pray for willingness. And so perhaps I will one day, perhaps I won't. I travel. I'm going on a trip next week for 10 days. I'm going out of town this weekend. I'm doing a lot of traveling between now and November for whatever reason. And I still haven't, I will bring my scale with me, but I don't know that I will use it. But I have a pretty good idea now about what I eat. I know what foods are my allergic foods, which foods are my alcoholic foods. That I'm very clear on, and there's no way that I will eat those. So I used to have a red, yellow, and green light list. I don't know if you all are familiar with that, but green light was what you can eat freely. Red light is what you definitely cannot eat. And yellow light was depending on my spiritual, how I was spiritually that day, how I was feeling. Did I feel connected to my higher power? Did I feel safe with this food? So for example, for me, one of those foods is popcorn, movie theater popcorn. And I just realized after learning about entire abstinence that that's just not okay for me, right? So now I have what we would call maybe a red list and a green list. There's no yellow list. There's no more negotiating. Those yellow foods were things that I was negotiating with all the time. And there's no more negotiating for me. There's no more negotiating for me with the food. There's no more negotiating for me on whether or not I do a 10th, 11th, and 12th step. There's no more negotiating on whether or not I pray or meditate. There's no more negotiation for me. I do these things. And this is all part of my program. And if I want to maintain my absence, but also increase and enlarge my spiritual life, then this is what I have to do. I had a conversation with a friend the other day who was commenting on how many friends I have. And I said, friendship is very important to me, and I really need a network, and I understand that I need that, so I nurture those relationships. That's what I do with my higher power. I nurture that relationship, because if I don't talk to higher power every day or check in with higher power every day, that relationship is going to deteriorate and it's going to fall apart. So I have to do this every single day. I remember when I was younger, I used to think, well, if I live long enough, like let's say I get to be 85, maybe then I'll have another piece of chocolate, right? When I'm 85. And then with my current recovery, I realize I don't want to be miserable the last few years of my life if I live to be that long. I'm not interested in that. Now I have this other fear, which is kind of, I don't know. Anyway, I have this fear or this thought. What if I get Alzheimer's disease? Will I remember that I don't eat sugar? Will I remember that I don't eat whatever sweeteners? Will I remember? So I have to trust my family. They know what I eat and what I don't eat. So I have to trust them to remember for me, or to make sure that my caregivers, if I ever get to that point, God willing, I won't, I won't need that. But if I do, that they will remember that this is part of my food plan. And, when I came back into the rooms in 2005, my children were young. And I used to test them, like they got ice cream. Oh, can I have a taste? No, Mom, you're allergic to that. Because I didn't tell them about addiction until they were older. No, Mom, you're allergic to that. And I was like, that's the right answer. Thank you very much. And I would do this with them periodically, whatever it was. Oh, can I have a bite of your pizza? No, Mom, you're allergic to it. Oh, good. Thank you. That was the right answer. And I just kept doing that with them. And they got it. And then of course, when they got older and they started learning about addiction, I started to talk to them in those terms and in terms of the program. They know that I believe in a higher power. They know I
10
pray all the
minutes,
time.
Diane.
One of my sons, how much?
10 minutes.
Thank you.
You've 10 minutes left.
One of my sons, when he would get into trouble, he goes, Mom, say a serenity prayer for me. Mom, pray to God for blah, 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 blah. I'm like, you know what, honey? This is not like your Christmas list. This is not your birthday list. It's not a wish list. But if you want to say serenity prayer with me, say it with me. And my kids know it because they hear me all the time. They hear me say it, they know I meditate. They would hear me on the vision line, and I would say the prayer at the end of the meeting. So they know all this stuff. And one of my children has had experience with AA. And so he knows it from the inside out as well. But, it's like the whole thing to me is that it's a progression. It's an evolution. We never stop learning. I never stop learning. I never stop growing. When I came into the rooms at 30 years old, I had no idea I would still be here at my age. I'm 68. Today's my half birthday. So I'm 68 and a half, right? I had no idea that I would still be here. I had no idea I'd reach 60. Like, I never thought about that, right? But I recognize as I look back and as I do my daily routines and my daily processes, I recognize that this is an evolution for me. This is, as I mature, my program matures, right? As I evolve, my program evolves. And I've learned that the solution is not in the food plan. It's not in the exercise. It's not in any of those books that I bought. I had a 10th step one time for myself. No, 9th step towards myself. I got rid of all the diet books, all the exercise books, all the diet cookbooks. Like I had tons of these books in my house. Goodbye. Donated them to whoever, out of my reach, out of my mind. Like I don't need those because they didn't work for me. As much as I wanted them to work, they didn't work for me, right? So I recognize that that's not where the solution is. It's not in the exercise program or the book or the tape or the guru, or even the food plan. It's the first half of the first step. That's what brings me into these rooms. I admitted that I'm powerless over food or whatever, fill in the blank. And that's not even the solution either. It's having to do all of the steps, having to do all of the steps. I remember we had people would say, do what you, I can't do what you want and not do what you want. I don't know. Like choose the ones that work for you and ignore the rest. I can't think of what the expression is, but it's like, so I used to think it was like, the Chinese menu, one from column A, one from column B. Like it's not. It's the entire program, one step at a time. Whether we're talking about the steps in the 12 steps, or if we're just talking about what to do on a daily basis, do what's in front of you, right? Just do what's in front of me. I have to do what's in front of me. So, sometimes I do go off into the future. I project and then I get really anxious. So I have to pull myself back. And when I think back on the past, sometimes I'll get sad, but not so much anymore because I've done so many fourth steps. But I often remind myself to keep my head where my feet are. If I keep my head where my feet are, I'm staying in the present and I'm staying connected to my higher power. My higher power is not in what's going to happen in 3 days from now. My higher power is not what happened 3 days ago, right? And when something happens to me, I do a 10th step. And I know people who do 10 steps many times a day. I don't do them every day. I do them as they come up for me. And I remember talking with someone about this early on in my recovery. And she said to me, well, that's because you're recovered. That's because you're living in recovery. That I don't have as many resentments as I used to have. Things happen and there are little annoyances and I'll write it out or I'll call somebody about it. But I don't have very rarely do I have those big things. Although I will say that I work in a day camp in the summers, and this past summer, we have 8 weeks of camp. In the 6th week of camp, I got thrown under the bus twice by the same person. I was pissed. I was really upset. I was really angry. Man, did I do 10 steps on that? And I tried to talk to her and she avoided me. So I never really got to say to her what I needed to say, but that's okay because I was still able to do my work. I did my part, stay on my own side of the street. In camp, we say, stay in your lane. I took care of my piece of it and I talked with people and I wrote about it. I did what I had to do. And it was really upsetting. But I know today that I can do this work and I do this work. It's not something that I pick and choose. Take what you want and leave the rest. I don't do that anymore. I'm always doing the whole thing. And any opportunity for service, I will do. If somebody like today,
5 minutes.
thank you. Kara asked me to speak at this meeting. So thank you for asking me to do service. So I'm here. I do service on the Vision Few meeting and in my face-to-face meetings. Yesterday, I got a text. Could I please substitute for someone who couldn't be there today on the Vision meeting? So I subbed on that meeting. And I'm so grateful that I have these opportunities to do service because for so long, when I was in and out of relapse, I couldn't do any service. We had a meeting on a Sunday morning and every service position had an absence requirement except standing at the literature table during the break. And I volunteered to do that every week because there was nothing else that I could do in terms of the service position for that meeting. But I could stand at the table during break and whoever came over, I would talk to, whatever it takes. I do my phone calls. The program is not the tools, but the tools support my program. I've heard it say that the tools are the banisters to help you walk the steps. And they support my program. I do outreach. I take calls. I make calls. I do my writing. I do my praying. I don't even know what they are. Literature. I sponsor. I have a sponsor. I have sponsees. I'm doing it automatically without really even having to think about it and making like the effort to say, okay, today I'm going to do this tool. It doesn't work like that for me. I just do what I need to do, and then as it works out, I'm doing the tools. So I'm going to end with just by saying again that we are all children of a creator. We all have this binding thing, this spark within us that connects us to each other and to others and to the higher power, whatever that may be for you, right? But again, that relationship has to be simple for me. It has to be simple. I have to be able to understand it. Even if I don't understand the whole thing, I need to have some basis of understanding on what it is. And all I need to do is to be willing and honest. And honesty was not easy for me, but it came, and people will say, just surrender. I can't surrender, but I can cooperate. So if you can't surrender, just cooperate. Cooperate with what the big book tells you. Cooperate with what your fellows are telling you. Cooperate with what your sponsor is saying. Just be cooperative. And that for me was so much easier than surrendering. Like surrender to me just, I don't know, I just can't do it, or I couldn't at the time. So that's what I want to end with. And again, I appreciate you asking me to do service, and I'm so glad that I could join you today. Thank you. With that, I'm going to pass.
Thanks so much, Diane. Okay, we will now open the Q&A section of our meeting, which will also be recorded. Please post your questions only in the chat function directly to me, and I'll ask a question on your behalf. So go ahead and send your questions over and I'll read them out for Diane. All right, question number 1. How did you come to be willing to be honest?
Great question. I think when I got to that point 5 years ago, when I said, that this disease is going to kill me, and I truly, truly believed it, I think that might have been the first spark of being honest. And I worked with my sponsor, and I knew that at that point, I'd been in the room since 1986. So that was already like, what, 30 years or something? Or whatever, 25, I don't know, whatever the math is. But I knew that if I really wanted this to work, if I did not want to die from this disease, and I don't, I had to be completely honest with my sponsor. And that's where it started, being completely honest with my sponsor. And then from there, it kind of like radiated out to other people, to other situations. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Next question. Was there a turning point in your spiritual practice?
Well, that's a good question too. I don't know. I know that when I walked into the rooms in the 80s, I didn't believe in God. And I don't know if I was agnostic or atheist. I just remember saying, I don't know if there's a God or not. And if there is, I don't believe in it. That's what I remember thinking. And I think that over time, I was told at that time to just act as if. And so when I started seeing evidence, that really helped me a lot. And I think that might have been the turning point. And then again, like I said, with that meditation that I had a few years ago, that kind of really solidified and gave me a powerful understanding of what my higher power is and what my higher power can do for me, and I still look for evidence. So for example, I can't see whatever this thing is, just like I cannot see the air, I cannot see the wind, but I can see the trees blowing in the breeze. That's evidence, right? And so when things like that happen, I realize that that's higher power. So I don't know if I had an exact moment. Like I did not have a spiritual experience. I had a spiritual awakening. I am a slow person. They say in this promises sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. I am on the slowly end. I make jewelry. I made myself a pair of earrings with turtles on them because I'm on the slowly end. So I'm not sure, but I think just recognizing, acting as if helped. And then that meditation just kind of really solidified it for me.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next one. Hold on a second. All right. The next question says, thank you for your amazingly honest share. I got so much from it, and you shared your dedication to service even when not abstinent. I'm interested in your approach to a sponsee that refuses to sponsor, please.
That is great because I have a sponsee who stopped calling me after we finished step 11 because she does not want to sponsor. Great question. So, what did I do with this woman? I just really talked to her and I pointed out the parts of the big book that say that this is the only immunity we have. This is the only thing that I can do that can help me stay abstinent is sponsoring, help me stay recovered, is doing service and sponsoring. That didn't change her mind. So I'm not her higher power. I'm not her therapist. I can't make her do anything. It does bring me some sadness to think that she did all this work and now she won't sponsor or she's too scared. And I just tell her to pray about it, and I also tell my sponsees and other people, I'll say, pray about it and call 3 recovered people and ask for their experience, strength, and hope. And, just hear it from another person. What was their experience with it? I was not scared to sponsor. But this particular woman is, and I know that there are others like that. So again, I would just say pray and call 3 recovered people and ask for their experience, strength, and hope. And then I pray for them also.
Thank you. Okay, next one is, thanks, Diane. Can you share more on what you do daily to nurture your relationship with your higher power?
Okay. So when I wake up, first thing is I go to the bathroom. And then I go back to bed and I start my prayer meditation. I start off by thanking God for waking me up, breathing life into me another day. I say my serenity prayer, 3rd step prayer, 11th step prayer, but I don't just recite them. I say them and I think about what's happening in the day. It tells us in the big book that we should, review the next 24 hours, right? And so I'll think about what am I supposed to be doing today? And I ask for God to help me because love and tolerance is my code to help me be loving and tolerant and to be compassionate because I told you earlier, I'm very judgmental, but I pray for compassion. So that's how I get started. And then when I get up and I do all my morning stuff and then I go sit down and I start writing in my journal. And in my journal on the morning writing, it's 5 things I'm grateful for, something I like about myself, something to keep in mind today. There's also a section for something I've learned today, which I used to write about what I would learn at the vision meeting, but I don't do that anymore. Sometimes I'll take notes, but I don't do that regularly. So that's my morning. I have an alarm on my clock, on my phone rather, on my smartphone. I have an alarm every 2 hours, and every 2 hours that alarm goes off and it's my reminder to pray because I take my will back all the time. So I pray again. I'll say a quick prayer. God, please help me. Or I'll say a serenity prayer or, whatever it is. Lord, have mercy, whatever it is, or help me, just help me. Or I'm turning my will and my life over to you again. Thank you. Right? Every 2 hours, starting at 9:30 in the morning, ending at 6:30 at night. And then what else? And then I write my 11 step review in the evening. And it asks me, it's in my journal, but it asks me all those questions that are in the big book for the 11th step, which I think is page 86. I don't know. And then during the day, when stuff comes up, I do a 10th step. Now, there are days that I can't write out a 10th step, so I'll just make a phone call because I have the format in my head already because I've been doing it for so long. But sometimes I have an app. I think it's called a toolkit. and I use the AA one. There's an OA one also, but it's like spiritual toolkit. And I can go in there and I can just write out. So if I'm in a situation where I cannot make a phone call and I don't have my journal, I'm out, I'll just run into the bathroom and I will text out, write it out on that app and then text it out to somebody. If I see something incredible, like I see a rainbow or a bald eagle or just the beautiful water. I live near a river, near the Hudson River. Thank you, God, for showing me this beauty. Just acknowledging it. Just saying, yeah. When I go to a convention, thank you, God, for the opportunity to do this. And or for showing me something, right? Just different times of the day. I would say that a lot of my prayers during the day are thank yous. They're just acknowledgments. They're just gratitudes, not just, but they are. They're gratitudes and they're acknowledgments. Except for those every 2 hours, those are definitely, turning my will and my life over. So I hope that helps. There's probably more, but I just can't think of what it is.
Thank you, Diane. Okay, the next question reads like this. Thanks so much for your wonderful share, Diane. Could you tell us what your nightly practice routine is? In particular, how do you discern what corrective measures you need to take from the day?
That's good. So again, I do my 11-step review in the evening, and I write out whatever happened, and I pray for help. And I usually do my 11th step with another person in the evening, but sometimes I'm doing it in the morning due to time different, because I do it with people all over the world. So with the time change, I'm on a train. I'm on an 11-step train. So I'll ask them if I think I need help. I always ask for feedback or suggestions when I do a 10th and 11th step with somebody. And at night, before I go to sleep, I thank God for the day. I thank God for the lessons and the blessings. So the blessings are things that are wonderful that happen, and the lessons are things that are not so wonderful that happened. But everything teaches. Everything is a teachable moment. Everything is a learning opportunity. And so I will ask so what do you think I should do about whatever, right? Or if I can't find something, like, can you help me find whatever, right? Where is this? And I almost always get an answer in the morning when I wake up. Yeah. So that's my last thing that I do at night.
All right, next question. How do you deal with it when you hear the message of recovery being watered down? How to not be judgmental in those instances? Because the person asking this question can feel themselves getting defensive when this happens.
That's a great question. Thank you for that. The face-to-face meeting that I go to every week, I go because I need to be around people and I need hugs. There are many things in that meeting I do not agree with. The group conscience decided that you need to have whatever the requirements are for sponsoring that don't work for me, and I just let it go. And if I have a sponsee from that meeting, I tell them, you're not going to sponsor at that point. You're going to go all the way through all 12 steps, and we're going to read Working with Others, and then you can sponsor. So I used to have a much harder time with what I call the typical OA meetings, because I would feel like I also thought they were watered down. Today, I recognize that everything is in God's control. Everything is in my higher power's power. That I have reasons for doing certain things, and higher power leads me to do certain things, and it's not for me to be judgmental about it. And there's more than one way to do this. So I work very closely with the big book, but I know people who have gotten abstinent using the OA 12 and 12, right? Or the workbooks. It's not for me to say. I just know it works for me. And that's how, and the way that I went through the steps with my sponsor 5 years ago, that's how I take people through the steps, because that way worked and that way stuck for me. I've been through the steps many different ways. I mean, I've been in the room since 1986. but this is the way that worked for me and continues to work for me. So this is how I do the sponsoring, and the rest of it, none of my business. World Service just came out with something about outside issues. I guess there was some questions about what is an outside issue, and that what they said was that it's not, whatever the topic is, it's not an outside issue if it interferes or with your program. So somebody could be talking about the color of the moon. I don't know. It's not an outside issue if it's something that affects their program, right? So we can talk about these things in relation to ourselves, but it's not for me to say that's an outside issue, because it's you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's not my business. That's all I know. It's like, okay, I'm going to mind my own business. I'm going to stay on my own side of the street. And what I like, if I like the meeting, I'm going to go. And if I don't like the meeting, I'm not going to go. Like I've been on Vision since 2014. It's a long time. That's 10 years. If I didn't like that meeting, I wouldn't continue going. So I think that we just, again, take what you want, leave the rest. If you're getting something from it, then stick with that. If you're not, then find something better for yourself, I guess. I hope that's answers that.
Thanks. How do you tell the difference between your will and your higher power's will?
If I get in trouble, it's my will. So, if something feels right, if it moves smoothly. So for example, 2.5 years ago, so not even further back than 2.5 years ago, I wanted to get rid of my house. But my father-in-law lived with me, and I have 3 kids. And I kept saying, well, my father-in-law goes somewhere. I didn't know if he was going to die, go to a nursing home. I didn't know what he was going to do. When he goes somewhere, and when my youngest child graduates college, I want to sell my house and move, because I didn't need this house anymore, and I didn't want to, whatever. So 2.5 years ago, I found my place where I'm currently living, and everything fell into place. It was crazy. There weren't even bidding wars at that time. It was just, they took the best offer. It wasn't that when you buy a house, you negotiate with the buyer and the seller, negotiate on the price. We weren't doing that here in my area 2.5 years ago. It was just the best offer, right? They took my offer. Okay, and they had like 7 or 8 or 10, I don't even know how many offers they had, right? Things fell into place. Things went very smoothly with the entire move. When I sold my house, I had 15 offers, and the one that we picked, everything went smoothly. It's like, so when things like that happen and they work out, I recognize that as higher power, that this is meant to be, right? We call it being meant to be, or in Yiddish, we say beshert, like that's meant to be. It's supposed to be this way. When there's a struggle, and I've had many things that I want to do that I struggle to do them, then I think, okay, that's my will. I'm directing this, and I can't be the director. I have to turn it over to higher power. And once I stop, and again, I pause, I pray, and then I proceed, then the next thought that comes to me usually is the right thought, right? And I don't remember where everything is in the big book, but it's in there. We'll have an intuitive thought. So that's how I know. And sometimes it's not so clear. And then again, when I do my step work, and at night when I thank God for the lessons and the blessings, and I see what comes up in my mind, or I ask help for something, and in the morning I usually have an answer, then I'll know that it's higher power.
Thank you. Okay. What have the gifts of recovery been for you? Have the promises come true?
Yes. Not everyone, not every day, but yes. My relationships, I think the biggest thing for me was my relationships with people were always messy. I never felt heard when I was younger, so I would talk very loudly, or I would gain weight to be seen, right? I don't do that anymore. My relationships with my friends are much better. There are people in my life who are no longer my friends, by choice, by my choice, or by their choice. I lost 2 friends last year. Neither one of them died, but they didn't like whatever happened. And someone said to me, well, that's because I've been sticking up for myself and I've been, not being a people pleaser anymore. And I'm setting boundaries, healthy boundaries. That was really hard for me to take. One of them was a friend for 50 years. One of them was a friend for almost 25 years. That was very difficult for me to take. And I prayed about it, did a bunch of 10th and 11th steps on them. But that's the way it was. But I'm going to say that mostly my relationships are much better. I don't have fear of economic insecurity. I will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle me. So again, that's higher power. Let's see. It's on page 83. Yeah. I don't know. Oh, here we go. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. Not 100%, but it has many times it has disappeared, right? Lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Again, not 100%, but very often. It's sort of like I don't get all the promises all the time, right? But I get them at times, some of the time, right? I get all of them some of the time. And there are promises in every step. It's not just the 9th step promises. There are promises in every step. In the 5th step, it's like we will know a new freedom, and a new happiness or something like after we do the 5th step, right? And, thank you, God, for helping me to know you better. So there are definitely promises everywhere. And again, I will say that, yes, they have come true for me. No, not all the time. It's the way it is.
All right, so we have time. We can squeeze in one more question. That's all the questions I had in the chat. Would anyone like to ask one more question? If you do, you can send it to me right now. No? Okay, so let me get back to the script. All right. Thank you so much, Diane, for that wonderful share. Q&A has now come to a close. And yeah, we appreciate your service, time, and energy. We will now open the chat to share our numbers for outreach. For those of who would like to, please share your name and numbers. Please could all available abstinent sponsors indicate if you are available to sponsor. For any newcomers, we have a newcomer hub where newcomer greeters will be very happy to have a more informal chat and or answer any questions you have. To any newcomers who would like to stay behind at the end of the meeting to ask questions, please raise your hand electronically now, and we will invite you to a breakout room on Zoom where our newcomer greeters will be able to help. This group also has a WhatsApp group for fellowship and inspiration. Please see the chat box for the link for more details. All right, we will close the meeting in the same way we always close a New Freedom Big Book study by reading the 12 Promises of Recovery as laid out in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous at the bottom of page 83, starting with the paragraph, if we are painstaking, and ending with, if we work for them. Diane, would you like to read the promises for us, please?
Sure.
They're up on the screen if that's easier.
Oh, okay. Okay, these are the 9th step promises. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. We're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them.
Thank you, Diane. Okay. Thank you for joining us today. Our meetings are recurring on a weekly basis, and our next meeting is scheduled for next Wednesday, September 18th, I think it is, at 7:30 p.m. British time. May your higher power bless you and keep you until then.